Everyone has a story. Who we are and what we become is shaped by the series of events that shape our history. Our story includes the shared history of our parents, our grandparents, and the details of what unfolds in our day-to-day lives. For many of us, these stories are sources of pride. They are what ground us. What happens when that is not the case? What happens when unthinkable, unspeakable things happen and there is no one there to pick up the pieces? What happens if you are 2, 5, or 8 years old? How does one live a happy, productive life when the story of your life begins with such tragedy? What happens if there is no one to tell your story? The story of your life, your family, your roots, the story of what makes you, you. In many parts of the world, young people are viewed as disposable. If they are not working, they serve no purpose and are a burden, not a joy. Who is there to tell their story? The story of the most vulnerable of children. Camp Moses, an orphanage in Arusha, Tanzania, is home to many children whose stories are those of unthinkable tragedy. They are the stories of abandonment, pain, loss, and fear. They are stories that bring us to tears and move us to action. Ultimately, they are the stories of remarkable courage, resilience, and beauty. They are the stories that need to be told and, even more importantly, need to be heard. Luini, who is about 6 years old, has had both of his parents die of AIDS. His dad first, then as his mother was being ravaged by the disease, she ended up leaving Luini at Camp Moses and his older brother at Camp Joshua, an orphanage for older children. Luini has what appears to be dyslexia, mixing up letters as he spells and not being able to read as well as he should for a child his age. Luini has an endearing smile and a twinkle in his eye that, despite his loss, draws people to him. 4-year-old Esther Corrado has seen unspeakable things in her life. When she was only 1.5 years old, living with her mother in the slums, a man walked into their mud-daubed shelter and murdered Esther's mother, right in front of her. Esther was found the next morning sitting beside her mother and was taken to Camp Moses. For a very long time, Esther would sit there, arms crossed, but with much love, bathing, and food. Esther is now never without a smile, one of the happiest kids on the playground. Esther Poe may never walk properly as a result of her stepfather. After beating Esther's mother until she was almost unconscious, Esther's stepfather went on to break both of Esther's legs and one of her hands. Esther never received proper medical treatment as it was too expensive, and her legs are bowed and will be until she can receive the surgery needed to fix her legs, as they would never set properly after they were broken. But you would never guess this would be the case, as Esther is often skipping around the playground, her huge smile covering her whole face. Zakayo will never remember his real parents. After having both of them die of AIDS, he was taken to Camp Moses and was very ill and malnourished. They tested Zakayo over and over again for the deadly virus, but all the results were negative. The head director of Lohada, Happiness Wambura, who spends hours every day praying for these kids, was astounded. Now about 7 years old, you never see Zakayo sitting down. He's always running around with a soccer ball or playing tag with the other kids. Angel has no idea what her last name is. Nobody has any idea what her last name is. Nobody knows how old she is or where she comes from. Angel was found in the largest slum in Arusha, Tanzania, and was brought to Camp Moses by strangers. When asked about her past, she simply says, "I don't know." There are days when Angel doesn't say anything and seems very depressed, but other days, she is seen talking and laughing with her best friend Esther, and is always trying to learn new words. Bryson spent the first year of his life living in the slums, in a dark room, on his back. He was often heard by the neighbors crying when his mother left him. But eventually the crying just stopped. After his mother was talking about abandoning him, he was sent to Camp Moses. It is believed now that Bryson has shaken baby syndrome and is mentally delayed for someone around the age of 3. Brian, Bryson's older brother, has taken on the responsibility of caring for himself and his younger brother. By begging neighbors for food, having to clothe themselves and keep safe, Brian did the best he could caring for his little brother and himself while their mother looked for work in the slums of Arusha. Now at Camp Moses for 2 years, Brian hasn't forgotten about little Bryson, often taking time out of his playtime to go talk to Bryson and have some fun with his little brother. Kelvin Masai wasn't wanted, and he had no parents and nobody to care for him, so Kelvin was put in the fire and left there. Kelvin luckily escaped and was later found playing in a field. After searching around for where he came from, Lohada took him in and placed him in Camp Moses. Now Kelvin, due to his injuries, is unable to play soccer or run around the yard with the other kids, so Kelvin is often found climbing trees or playground equipment, also ensuring that nobody fights and everybody gets along. Esther was dropped off at Camp Moses one day. Her mother decided it was best for Esther to live at the orphanage because it was unsafe for her at home. At only 5 years old, Esther was molested by her stepfather. Esther is the newest child at the orphanage, and for a while she wouldn't say anything, just sit in the dirt and cry. When being woken up by naps, she often had tears soaking her face and pillow. And then there's Joseph. Nobody is sure of what his last name is, but they do know what happened to this happy little boy. There was a lady who was very angry at Joseph's mother, so in revenge decided to harm Joseph in a way that Joseph will always notice. This lady castrated Joseph in revenge, but thanks to the kindness of volunteers, Joseph had reconstructive surgery on his penis. Since the surgery, Joseph's infections have cleared up and he is far healthier. Joseph is the happiest boy on the playground and is always up for making new friends. Finally, there's Kelvin Samora. Not being able to be fed as his father was withering away as a result of AIDS, Kelvin was malnourished and had virtually no muscle. After Kelvin's father passed away from AIDS, his mother fled. Lohada director Happiness Wombura was fortunately their neighbor, took Kelvin into the orphanage and got him healthy again. Kelvin is now well fed and is always playing football, flying paper airplanes, and swinging as high as he can on the swings. There are 200 children on the waiting list to get into Lohada. These children will not be educated, nourished, or protected until they can get into Lohada. Many of these children will die before they get the help they need. This is their story.